Welcome to Virtualize Everything. So this project touches quite dear to my heart, as it's one of the original projects or style of projects that got me into Proxmox originally. So way back when, I was a poor college student, and I got into Proxmox because I was looking for a solution to Raspberry Pis. Yes, at the time they were $35. I've done some reading and they seem to be going for a lot more right now. But back then they were $35. But even then, I would need 2 or 3 for some of my projects. And really, they didn't use up any of the resources even on the Raspberry Pi. They were running simple scripts or something like that. So I got looking for a way where I could divide out cores and CPU usage, but have a standalone system so I wasn't messing around with my laptop that I was doing homework and other things on. Because if something goes wrong, that can be quite problematic. Anyways, let's get on to the project where I show you how to make a deauthentication scanner and run a deauthentication attack with Python using Proxmox. Okay, so you can see here that I have 2 VMs running on Proxmox, one called Deauth Scanner and one called Deauth Attack. The Deauth Attack is not a script that is my own. It's one that I found on GitHub, and I'll show you the GitHub link when we get to that point. The Deauth Scanner is pretty much built by me. I did steal bits and pieces or find bits and pieces of information across the internet from many different sources to get it to work, but it's my own compilation put together. So anyways, with that, let's take a look at it running. So here is the VM that's running the scanner, and here's the VM that's running the attack. So we'll run the commands on the attack, and you can notice the packets coming in here on the scanner. So there's the proof that it works. Now we're going to move on to how we made the scanner and the attack. We're going to start with the attack because obviously the scanner can't work without the attack. So we're here at Proxmox. The first thing we're going to need to do is set up 2 Ubuntu server instances. This will allow us to set up both our Deauth scanner and our Deauth attack on separate instances, just like you see on 108 and 109 here that I've done for myself. So we already have a template for Ubuntu 21.04 here, or 22.04, sorry. And so to clone it, we're just going to go right click and go to clone. And it's going to call it 101 this time. Let's call it 110. We can have a linked clone and we'll call this. Now's as good of a time as any to tell you, you can't use this or shouldn't use this on anything or anyone but your own hardware. It's illegal, so be careful what you do and only use it for legal purposes. Alright, so our clone's created. So the next thing we're going to need to do is pass through our USB Wi-Fi card by highlighting this, then highlighting hardware, going to add USB device, selecting USB, and we're going to pick the Wi-Fi card and hit add. Now we can go ahead and start this VM up by hitting start, and we can watch the console to see it come up. Alright, so we can log in. Now as I clone this, I don't know the exact DHCP assigned IP address, so I can't SSH into this container to begin working with it in a way that I can copy and paste commands easily from my notes. So all I'm doing is running IP address so I can see the IP address here, and it looks like we're 84. Alright, so with that, I can go open my terminal and I can establish an SSH connection to the VM. Now we can minimize Proxmox and get it out of the way for the time being. I'm going to open the attack because that I have on my desktop, more or less because I've contained all my notes here for the software needed. So let's start installing the prerequisite software. The first thing we need is Python 3, which should actually be installed here, but let's make sure that we have it. Now we need pip. Alright, so now that pip's installed, we're going to use pip to install scapy. Now, we're going to do something a little bit uncommon with pip, but we're going to use sudo in front of it. This is going to generate a warning message, but since we're going to be running everything with sudo privileges at the end, it just seems to make everything work. Alright, so the last thing that we need to do is install aircrack-ng. This will be used for putting the Wi-Fi card into monitor mode and setting up the interfaces so the rest of the script works. Now the last piece of software I'm going to install is not required, but it's something that makes my life a little bit easier, as I don't prefer to work with Vim. I prefer Nano, so let's install Nano. Alright, so all the software should be on this VM at this time that we need to run the script. So the first thing I'm going to do is use Nano to create a file called Deauthentication Attack. We're going to end that in .py. Now I'm going to copy the contents of this script over. Now at this point, I'm going to point this URL out that's here, right here. And this URL is the URL from the directions that I used to create this. This script is entirely someone else's. I'm only using this so that I can test the deauthentication scanner that I built. And I'm also showing you how to use it because there is a fair amount of prerequisite software and a little bit of knowledge on how to get it working. All right, so everything's there. So we're going to press Control X, Y, and enter. Now we can begin by running some commands to get our Wi-Fi card up and running. The first thing we're going to do is type IP address and find out the name of our Wi-Fi card right here. Now I'm going to copy that I'm going to copy the command sudo airmon-ng check kill and run that. Then I'm going to run the sudo airmon-ng start command for my Wi-Fi adapter. This will start our Wi-Fi adapter into monitor mode. Now we need to start the airdump-ng program to set up and get our Wi-Fi card fully working so it works with our script. So here's the scanner running and looking at the different traffic going on. Now our script at this point will be able to be used, but we have to keep this running. So we're going to establish another SSH connection to the server, and we can run IP address again to see that we have indeed changed to WLAN 0 mon. Now I've provided my command for myself here, but let's walk through what's going on here because it's fairly complicated and I haven't fully explained the script yet. All right, so we'll paste this in here and now we'll scroll over the script and let's enlarge it so we can look at it a little bit closer. All right, so the first thing we have is we're going to run this with sudo and Python 3 to call Python. Then the name of the script, deauthenticationattack.py, and then -i, which we can see over here is a parser argument for the interface. So we're going to call WLAN 0, then -c, which is a parser argument for the number of packets we're going to send. And I'm going to change this here to 100, just so we're sending a few less packets. Then -a is the BSS ID. Now this is the MAC address of the base station that you plan on attacking, and that can be found right here. And then we need the MAC address for the last thing, which is -t of the target, which is the computer that you plan to deauth or kick off the network. And we're going to place that with -t. Now, oftentimes that can be found down here in this lower section with a computer that's communicating with the particular router. There's one right there. All right, so with that, we can run the command. And there's our 100 packets being sent. Now, obviously, we can't see anything happening yet because the scanner's not up and running. But we'll get that scanner up and running here in a minute. The attack script finished. Let's take a moment and actually look at our main objective, making the scanner, the tool that we're going to use to uncover the packets that are used to deauthenticate a network. Now, you might be asking, why do we care about these packets? Well, a bunch of these packets can be sent at once to effectively kick somebody off a network. And then you can capture the two-way handshake to break into a Wi-Fi network. So we want to watch for any large amounts of these packets being sent so that we know somebody's trying to break into a network by us, near us, or our network. Now, this might seem like something that might not happen to you and you trust your neighbors, but just imagine somebody sitting outside on the road in a parking spot. They could be doing this too, for whatever reason. Who knows? But I've had some problems myself, and this is something that I like to have in my toolbox. I don't leave it running all the time, but it's something good to know if you're having problems. All right, so with that being said, let's start the process by cloning our Ubuntu 22.04 server. And then we're going to go to hardware and we're going to pass through the USB port just like we did before. Notice we're using different USB adapters. If we tried to use the same one, it wouldn't work very well. Now we're going to start this just like we did before and open the console. Now we're not going to use the console for very much, but we do need to use it to get the IP address. And we're going to open a new terminal window ourselves, and we're going to SSH that system. Just like before, we're doing this so that we can easily copy and paste commands. As unlike containers in Proxmox where you can copy and paste, you're unable to copy and paste even using the web interface to a VM. And I just opened the wrong script, so let me open the right one. All right. And just like before, and on our website as well, I've provided the list of available commands and the list of prerequisite software. So let's start installing it. First one we're going to install is pip, and the command that we're going to use to do that is sudo apt install python 3-pip -y. And it looks like pip's installed in this system. We actually SSH'd into the wrong system. So now let's go ahead and install. Okay, so pip's done installing, so let's next install scapy. To do that, we're going to use the command sudo pip3 install scapy. Now I know traditionally we don't use sudo with pip and it can cause some problems, but since this is going to be running under sudo, it's actually been found, at least by me, that I want to install scapy using sudo. So now let's hit enter. The last bit of required software to make this script run is going to be aircrack-ng. And we're going to install that using the command sudo apt install aircrack-ng -y. So going to install nano, just because I prefer using it. To install nano, I'm going to use the command sudo apt install nano-y. Alright, so with all of our prerequisite software installed, let's go ahead and copy this script over to this server. Sudo nano, file name, py, because it's a Python script, enter. Now we can copy the contents of this entire file here, and now that we've done that, we can take a look at this script. It's actually pretty easy. So we're going to call the sniff command out of scapy, and we're going to pass it the Wi-Fi interface, and I've actually hard-coded this here instead of using a parser argument like the previous script. Then we're going to put a comma, and we're going to type prn equals. And in a lot of cases, when running scapy, you can do something like a lambda summary output or whatnot, but we're going to apply a filter that we're going to custom create up here in this function here. Then we're not going to store it, and we're going to do it for a packet count of 0. So then, since we've called this function here, process packet, we have an if statement that looks for the .11 deauth packet right here. And this is the packet that we're looking for, the packet that we're sending out with the other script, and the packet that causes a Wi-Fi connection to drop. Then we just have a print statement that prints out that it was found and the date and time so that we can keep track of the outputs and tell that they're different. All right, so now that we've explained the script, let's go ahead and save it. And then we can start running the commands to get this server, or the system rather, up and going and ready to start the process of looking for these packets. So the first thing I want to run is an IP address command and get the name of the adapter right here. And then I want to run a sudo airmon-ng check kill. And then I want to run a sudo airmon-ng start with my Wi-Fi adapter's name, like so. Now we can verify with an IP address command again, and we can see that it changed to WLAN 0 mon, and we can then run the arrow dump-ng command to start monitoring. Now we can open another terminal session and SSH back into the server. And at this point, we can run sudo python 3 and the scanner. So now that we have the scanner up and going, we can go ahead and send some packets and see it work. There is a little bit of delay here with the packets coming in, but there you have it. There is a working deauthentication packet scanner written in Python and ready to be used for troubleshooting your network, or in case of protection needed from nosy neighbors that are trying to do things that they necessarily shouldn't do. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial of how to use Proxmox to get around the Raspberry Pi shortage, and also found it very informational about how to build a deauthentication scanner. As always, have a good night.